We'll get started. Good morning, friends. Tony Pellegrini here with Teaching and Learning at Southern Utah University. I have Kris Phillips with us today, and we are just excited to be able to share with him one of the, it's kind of a good news, bad news. I'm very appreciative of the president wanting more students, but what that means is more faculty and more people to learn, but wonderful people to learn. We have great faculty here, and I love learning about them and what the wonderful things that they are doing. Kris, would you mind taking a moment or two, introducing yourself, telling us a little about you, some information that we'd like to know about you?
Sure, absolutely. Well, as you said, my name is Kris Phillips. This is my 6th year at SUU. I came after spending a year working full-time at Northern Michigan University in the Upper Peninsula, just a beautiful area right on Lake Superior there. I did my PhD in philosophy at the University of Iowa, completing that in 2014. Before that, I grew up in Michigan in the Lower Peninsula and spent most of my life there. And so thanks so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to learn more about you, absolutely, to learn a little bit more about you. Philosophy, tell us a little about the courses you teach. Would you take a moment and tell us some of those?
Yeah, well, the philosophy program here, is a pretty exciting program. We're growing right along with the university, and it's really cool to see. Up until this year, I was one of 2 faculty members in the philosophy program, so I kind of teach a little bit of everything. Both Dr. Kirk Fitzpatrick and I pretty much covered the whole curriculum. So
I kind of get the sense you really like that, though. You
I
like
love it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's great. It keeps things fresh and keeps me going. So I've taught, a whole bunch of things: intro to philosophy, intro to logic, the advanced logic course that we offer. I've taught a class called Mind, Language, and Reality, Theory of Knowledge, Modern Philosophy, which focuses on European philosophy in the 17th and 18th centuries. I've taught senior seminar a couple of times. I've been fortunate enough to work with the folks in the honors program, teaching a bunch of different classes for them in areas space and motion, time, I can't even remember all of them, but there were a couple others, I think sense and death recently. So kind of all over the place. But
wow.
It's a blast.
That is wonderful. That is exciting. And that enthusiasm that you have, I think, really translates to your learners as well.
I think so. I can see our students in the philosophy program they're outstanding. They're really hardworking, bright students. They're energetic, they're excited, they're doing all kinds of stuff, not just for the philosophy program, but university-wide. They're kind of everywhere.
They make our university move forward, don't they? Absolutely.
They sure do.
I appreciate that. With philosophy, do you have a particular teaching style, any particular methods that you found over your last 6 years here and in Northern Michigan as well, maybe that really tend to engage your learners and help them to participate not only in class, but as you've outlined, outside of class as well?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to actually teaching in the classroom, I tend to be a little bit old school. I lean quite a bit on lecture. But one of the things that I think is really critical for philosophy, and I'm sure it's true of other disciplines, but I'm not a specialist in anything else. One of the things that's really critical is just not just talking at students, but getting them to engage. And so one of the things that I do that I think is often very frustrating for my students is I refuse to take a stand on any issue. So we read philosophers, we read texts from philosophers, books, articles, whatever, and I'll typically present 2 or 3 or 4 different positions about one topic. And while we're reading a particular author, I'm just going to defend that topic to the death and just take a stand on that. And then we'll read the next person who says that first one's wrong, and I'm going to defend that. And I challenge the students to make up their own minds. And so in that way, I try to get a dialogue going. It's difficult. The material is challenging. It's pretty abstract. It's kind of out there. But if you can kind of push them a little bit, say some really absurd or crazy things, and make them think that I believe it, at least for the time being, then usually it gets them riled up enough. And then I think just that kind of engagement, that back and forth, what these people are saying is important, but what's also equally important is whether you believe it and why. Uh,
Are you pretty upfront with your students as far as, I'm not going to tell you what I believe or where I come from, because I could see a student saying, hey, wait a minute, you spoke last week like you really believed this, and now this week, oh my goodness, you really believe. What does Kurt really believe? How do you deal with that kind of disconnect in their minds?
Oh, sure. No, I'm pretty upfront about that. It's much more at the lower levels, at the intro levels. I just say on day one, I'm not going to tell you what I think about this. Or sometimes I'll say, I don't have any opinions. That's of course false. I have lots of strong opinions, but it's a tool because again, the biggest thing I think about philosophy is it's not teaching you what you should think. It's teaching you how to think about things. So at the end of the day, really don't care what position students end up taking on any topic at all. I might disagree with them, but that's irrelevant. I want them to think carefully about it and come to their own conclusions for what are good reasons.
So, I love what you just said. I can disagree with students, but I can still love them and teach them and learn alongside them.
Absolutely.
I can absolutely disagree with you. And in our world today, I see us getting more compartmentalized or departmentalized or further along the ends of the continuum. I'm not sure how to really articulate it, but being able to say, this is what I think, or this is what I believe and why I do it. And not worrying about being put down or pressed down. So important to our young people today.
I think so too.
I think it's an important component of their learning. We've talked a little about your teaching styles, your methods, your philosophies, your approaches. How do you try to, and maybe you've addressed this already, but could you go a little deeper in how you try to pull out from students their various learning styles, how they really, in philosophy, I'm sure you've got kids along a wide continuum of how they learn. How do you try to address those learners' needs in your classroom?
Sure. So I would say a variety of different ways. Again, a lot of students, probably aren't all that excited about the lecture format. But this is sort of where I think it's important to try to come up with new, interesting ways to get them to talk to one another, to get them to engage with me, to kind of break it up so it isn't just 50 minutes or 75, heaven forbid, of just talking at students about complex things. So I've done a couple of different things in my intro classes. I have the students break up into groups and kind of really dive deep into a particular passage that I highlight for them. And I say, okay, figure out what's going on with this, talk to each other about it, work through it. And that gets them both engaged. It gets me talking a little bit less, so they don't have to hear me all the time. But also I think it kind of builds an intellectual community in a sense. They get to know one another and can kind of learn from one another as much as from me. So that's useful. Assignments, I try to come up with new, sort of more interesting ways of doing the kinds of things that we do in philosophy, which, to be honest, is reading and writing papers. So one thing I'm really excited about, I'm trying out this year, I have a colleague at York College in Pennsylvania who's teaching a theory of knowledge class, and I'm also teaching a theory of knowledge class. So instead of doing a traditional research term paper, we're doing really short, focused papers, and we're doing kind of a virtual conference. So our students from both schools are going to swap papers through Google Drive, and they're tasked with writing commentary on one another's papers. So they're getting comments from students across the country. They're commenting on papers from students from across the country. And then when they get them back, they have to go through, and I'm putting them in groups and kind of have a Q&A all digitally. So
cool. It sounds like you're putting your own conference together almost.
Basically. And not to mention, we do an annual undergraduate conference here on campus, but maybe we can come back to that.
We will. I do have to, because you really just fascinated me a moment ago. I was going to ask you a question. With these young people, it seems like they're constantly living off of their cell phones, their tablets, their computers. Um, and I'm so grateful for the technologies, using sharing documents across the country with learners from across the country through Google Docs and those kinds of things. Other technologies that you've tried to investigate at all, or that students have said, I can't put my phone down. Is there some way I could use that to be able to engage or work in your class? Anything at all like that? I love what you're doing with Google Drive. I think that's great.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I got to say, it wasn't my idea originally. I'd love to take credit for it. I borrowed it from my colleague out at York College, Dr. Stoutenberg. But I don't know. Seems like the technology thing is kind of a losing battle. I'd love to be able to ban laptops in the classroom or something like that, but at this point, I've just leaned into it. If I ask people a question that's a relatively straightforward kind of definition question, or just even kind of a history question, um, I'll just kind of point out, hey, look, you have a computer in your hand. Go look it up. Use it. You have this tool, this amazing resource.
And isn't that a great problem-solving tool?
So
don't you use problem-solving skills in philosophy? I would think
Absolutely.
that was what you do. That's your bread and butter, what you do. How can we solve this problem?
Yeah.
And talking, reading, writing about the issues that we come into.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Oh, sure.
That is wonderful. Love your enthusiasm, love your connection with your learners. Has that always been there? How have you overcome or become such a great enthusiastic teacher to work with your learners?
Well, thank you. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a really great question. So growing up, my dad was an English professor for 42 years, teaching in Michigan, and I think just kind of watching him interact with students, watching him teach, watching him, just being around him all the time, I just kind of picked up, probably not consciously, but just sort of picked up some of the things that he did. As far as where the enthusiasm comes from, I just really like doing philosophy, and I think it's really cool that my job is to read and think about and talk about really interesting things with people who more often than not are also interested in those things. And so big picture wise, I think that's where the enthusiasm comes from. It's just kind of, I can't believe I get to do this. This is a career. This is amazing. It's absolutely awesome.
We still want to get paid though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
we still like that. Absolutely. We love it. It's a great passion, but we like being compensated for it as well.
For sure.
Kind of along those same lines, you have talked about, this interest and enthusiasm, and it's your wonderful model that your father gave you to help you be such a great teacher. But certainly, there are times in your life as a professor, as an individual, a learner, a leader, that you have passions and knowledge about concepts that are important to you, but others really maybe not believe exactly how you believe, or agree with you on particular topics.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us for a moment or two about how you deal with that, or what's something that's really true to you that you're passionate about, but really maybe nobody really agrees with you on?
Boy, there are so many things I would say that I think are probably right, where virtually no one agrees with me. If I had to narrow it down, if I had to pick one thing, a couple of years ago, I made this pitch. I was invited back to my alma mater. I did a master's degree before my PhD at Western Michigan, and they invited me to come back for kind of an alumni weekend. So I went and gave a talk where I argued that everyone in society has an obligation both to themselves and to others to continue to study the liberal arts, the sort of classic sense of the liberal arts. So you facility with mathematics, with science, with literature, with the fine arts, with philosophy, with all of these different things. We owe it to ourselves and we owe it to everybody else. It seemed relatively well received, but as is often the case when philosophers make an argument,
Somebody's out to get you.
somebody's out to get me. And it seemed like there were a whole bunch of folks who were out to get me that day.
Wow.
And maybe they didn't like the idea that it's an obligation, that there's this sort of moral component to it. But I'm pretty sure that's right. And I think part of the beauty of being a philosopher, or a student of philosophy, or even just somebody who studies it on their own, is sort of being open to being wrong about stuff. I always tell my intro students, and this is maybe another thing that nobody agrees with me about. It's kind of awesome to be wrong about things.
Yeah, I haven't heard many say that.
Yeah, but I think it's awesome to be wrong because then you get to learn new stuff. Being right all the time would be really boring. It just seems like you wouldn't be able to move forward. And I think those two are related. So, even when people are out to get me, even if they don't buy it, even if they think what I'm trying to convince them of is weird or problematic or pointless or something like that, cool. Show me why I'm wrong, and if I am, I'll happily admit it, and I'll accept what now seems right.
And can talk about it. I think, coming from my education background, we look at learners as lifelong learners. We're continually learning.
Right.
We're never there. I don't know that I'm ever going to be there. We want to continually learn. And so I think those are wonderful skills to be able to take away from a university experience that they enjoy with you. You'd mentioned, just one last question, you'd mentioned another topic that we want to save for another time, but we have a moment or two now, and I am embarrassed. I've been talking about too many things.
Oh,
Can you remember what we were talking, what the theme was?
Was it the undergraduate conference?
I think so.
I think it might have been.
Yes. Would you take a moment and just tell us a little bit of an advertisement here? That's totally fine.
Yeah. Boy, it's one of the coolest things I think about teaching at SUU is our undergraduate philosophy conference. So for the past 5 years, the entire time that I've been here, the philosophy club and the students affiliated with it have put in just unbelievable amounts of work in preparing what is now an internationally recognized undergraduate conference. So starting right about this time, early October, we get funding requests together, we put together a budget, and reach out to a hopefully nationally renowned scholar, bring him to campus as our keynote, put out a call for papers, and we solicit papers from around the country. Last year, our 5th year, it was a fantastic conference. We had, I think, over 42 submissions from 3 or 4 different countries.
Oh my goodness.
Obviously all over the United States, and then also Canada, I think Greece and Belgium.
Oh my goodness.
So unbelievable. And then the students, with our help, work through all the submissions, look at them, and pick the top 4. And we bring those 4 students to campus and put together a day-long undergraduate research symposium, basically. And it is just awesome.
What wonderful practical problem-solving skills,
Yeah.
Real-world skills that they can transfer to whatever jobs they're going to, whether it's in teaching or whatever jobs they're going to have in the future. I think those are wonderful opportunities.
Yeah.
And you may not buy this, but I'm going to just at least try to show it. Invite your dad to come sometime. I think he'd have a great time there.
I would love to get my dad out here.
I think that would be a wonderful opportunity. Kris, any last minute things that you'd like to share? Anything that I haven't covered that you'd really like to share?
I should have had something in my back pocket ready to go here.
You've shared a lot. You've shared a lot. I promise you.
Maybe I'll just throw this one out here. Just a last minute pitch for the philosophy program itself. Sometimes people I think hear philosophy. They have maybe little to no understanding of what it is, or what they think is that it's weird and impractical. But again, one of the things that I kind of try to convince my students is, in many ways, this is the most practical kind of discipline. Whatever job you're going to go into, you need to communicate effectively. You need to think carefully. You need to be able to problem solve, as you've been saying. And ultimately, at least as the Greeks conceived of the purpose of philosophy, it was learning for the sake of living well, and we all want to do that. And so, if you dedicate your life to the study of knowledge and wisdom and the practical applications of these things and the pursuit of living well, I don't see how that could possibly be impractical.
I have maybe I'm Pollyanna, but I have a hope for the future. And with those particular skills, we can only make a better future. I really think we can only make a better future. Friends, if you have an opportunity, get into Chris's class, watch some of the things that he does, take him to lunch here on campus, and let him know your appreciation for him. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to visit with you today and with Kris. Kris, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And we look forward to hearing from all of you soon. Make it a good day, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, one and all.